Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy, and I'm glad you're visiting my channel. Here we share new confessions every day.
It was the kind of December day that made you question everything you ever believed about winter in Vermont. Not a single snowflake fell. The sky was a faded blue, pale and cold, but eerily calm, like the air right before a secret is told. I was standing in line at Kettle and Birch, my favorite little cafe tucked between a bookstore and a hardware shop in downtown Middlebury. I could smell nutmeg and espresso. Christmas music played softly, not obnoxious, just enough to make you think of twinkling lights and people who loved you. Then my phone rang. It was Dad. I stepped out into the chilly street before answering. The screen door creaked shut behind me. "Hey, Dad," I said, smiling a little. I hadn't heard from him in a few days. I figured he'd been busy prepping the house for the annual Christmas dinner. But his voice was off. Tight. Too casual. "Hey, Ren. Listen, we've been watching the weather. They're saying it's gonna be bad. Snowstorm heading in tonight. Black ice already forming upstate." I blinked. What? It's 38 degrees. I just walked here in sneakers. "It's dry." "Yeah, but you know how fast it turns," he said quickly. "We just don't want anyone on the roads. Your brother's staying put, and your mom doesn't want to take chances. So we're canceling. Everyone's staying home this year." I stood there, coffee forgotten. My fingers suddenly cold despite the gloves. "You're canceling Christmas dinner?" I know. "I hate it too," he said with a forced chuckle. "But hey, safety first, right?" I looked down Main Street. Cars passed smoothly. No sleet. No wind. The sidewalks were clear. My breath made small clouds in the air, but it wasn't storm weather. It was the kind of evening that makes you want to wrap a scarf around your neck, bring pie to your parents, and sit by the fireplace. "All right," I said slowly. "I guess. I'll stay in then. Next year we'll do it big, I promise," he said. "Love you, kiddo." "Love you too," I said. But the words felt strange, like they didn't land. The line went dead. I stared at the phone screen for a few seconds, then walked back into the cafe. Inside, everything smelled warm again. People laughed quietly in the corner. A girl with ginger curls pulled her beanie off and shook snowless hair onto her shoulders. No one else got the memo about the storm. And somewhere deep in my stomach, a small knot began to form, tight and cold. Something wasn't right. I tried to convince myself it didn't matter. I went home, poured myself a glass of wine, turned on It's a Wonderful Life for the third year in a row. I even laughed at the same parts one always do, like when Uncle Billy loses the money and blames the squirrels in his coat pocket. But something sat heavy in me, like unfinished business. Around 7:45 p.m., I got up to stretch my legs. I wasn't hungry, hadn't touched the food I made the night before, a small casserole I'd intended to bring to my parents. I wrapped a scarf around my neck and drove aimlessly, letting the quiet, empty streets lead me. At some point, I found myself turning down Jasper Lane, a sleepy cul-de-sac on the edge of town, where my brother, Cole, lived with his wife, Elise, and their 2 kids. He'd just bought the place last spring, an old Victorian with a wraparound porch and a red door that looked like it belonged in a Hallmark movie. I wasn't planning to stop. I just wanted to drive past, maybe see a light on, tell myself he was truly staying put, like Dad had said. But when I rounded the corner, I saw something else. 3 cars were in the driveway. Cole's pickup, Elise's SUV, and my parents' station wagon. I slowed the car. My heart was suddenly loud in my ears. They were there. I parked half a block away, turned off my headlights, and sat in silence, watching the scene unfold in their front window. Soft light glowed through sheer curtains. Inside, silhouettes moved, familiar outlines, gestures I knew like the back of my hand. Cole tossing something toward Dad, probably a dinner roll. Mom laughing into her wine glass. Elise carrying a pie dish to the table. I couldn't hear anything, but I could feel it, the comfort, the familiarity, the ritual I'd grown up in. I stared as Dad stood and raised his glass. A toast. They clinked. A pang ripped through me so sharply I almost gasped. It wasn't canceled. There was no storm. They just didn't want me there. I looked away, fists clenched in my lap, and that's when my phone buzzed. It was a push notification. Instagram. The best kind of Christmas is the one where everyone shows up. Hashtag family time, hashtag perfect holiday. Posted by Adelise Granger. There it was. The photo. Everyone was smiling, seated in front of the fireplace. Stockings above them. Plates full. Candles lit. My father had his arm around my mother, and Cole was holding one of the twins on his lap. There was even a small gift bag at the empty seat beside Elise's. My seat. They hadn't forgotten about me. They'd planned without me. And that was somehow worse. I didn't cry in the car. I didn't scream or call or drive up to the house and pound on the door asking why. That would have made me smaller. I wouldn't give them that. Instead, I drove back to my apartment in complete silence, the kind of silence that feels thick and padded, like the world's trying to muffle you out. I didn't even change out of my coat when I got inside. I sat down on the edge of my bed, phone in hand, staring at that Instagram photo until the screen dimmed. Then the phone rang. Mom. I watched it buzz in my hand. I didn't move. Let it go to voicemail. Then again. Dad. Buzz. Buzz. I turned the phone face down on the nightstand. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was too tired for that. The next day, there were 5 missed calls and 2 voicemails. The first was Mom. Her voice sounded syrupy, too sweet. Ren, honey, we just thought you'd be safer at home with the roads and everything. We didn't think you'd mind if it was just, a smaller thing this year. Just drop by later this week. We saved you some pie. The second was Dad. Shorter. More clipped. Call us back, okay? This is all just a misunderstanding. No, it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was very clear. That afternoon, I deleted Elise from my socials. Then Cole. Then Mom. Then Dad. I wasn't angry. Not in a fiery, screaming way. I was just hollow. Like the warmth that used to live in that part of me had been vacuumed out. They didn't forget to invite me. They excluded me. Deliberately. And they lied. That kind of decision doesn't come out of nowhere. It's a conversation. It's consensus. It's agreement. Let's not invite Ren this year. Let's lie to her. Let's pretend it's the weather. How long had they felt that way? Had I missed the signs? Or had I just refused to see them? Either way, it ended now. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a pen and paper. No text. No email. A real letter. Just 3 lines. You made your choice. I'm just finally accepting it. I won't be part of something that hurts me. Ren. I didn't mail it. Didn't need to. It wasn't for them. It was for me. And when the phone rang again the next day, I blocked the number. Then I opened a new page in a new notebook. Chapter 1. Not of the letter. Of my life. The first week was the hardest. I didn't realize how many small things I'd built around them. Saturday calls with Mom, that group chat Elise ran for birthday plans, even Dad's ridiculous habit of forwarding me articles about making the most of your 30s like I didn't already know how clocks worked. The silence was disorienting. The space they left wasn't just emotional. It was logistical. No one asked how my day was. No one reminded me to check my tire pressure before snow season. But beneath the ache, something strange started to bloom. Relief. It was like breathing through a broken rib and suddenly realizing it didn't hurt anymore. I started spending more time at Kettle and Birch, the cafe where I'd first gotten the call. There was something poetic about reclaiming the space. I'd bring my laptop, order a black cardamom latte, and write nothing fancy. Just thoughts. Sometimes fragments of scenes. Other times memories I didn't know I'd kept. I hadn't written in years. By February, it had become a ritual. I'd sit near the big window, the one that overlooked the corner bookstore, and watch the world move. Snow came and went. Valentine's Day decorations went up. And I wasn't waiting for anyone to check on me. I stopped waiting in general. In April, I took a solo weekend trip to Providence. Stayed in a tiny loft above an art gallery and walked 8 miles a day in thrifted boots. I tried oysters for the first time and hated them, then tried whiskey and loved it. By June, I'd signed up for a night course in creative writing at the local college. By August, I was helping a friend launch her handmade ceramics store online. By October, I had my own freelance clients. Real ones. Paying ones. I didn't talk about my family. Not because I was ashamed, but because I didn't need to. People didn't ask, and I didn't offer. That silence, for once, was a kindness. I thought the holidays might undo me again, but they didn't. I bought a tree for the first time in my adult life. A small, lopsided one from a lot behind the fire station. I decorated it with mismatched ornaments from a vintage shop and one glass bird I ordered online. Green wings, gold eyes. On Christmas Eve, I made dinner for one. Roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, and a chocolate tart I ate directly out of the dish. I played a Charlie Brown Christmas, danced barefoot in the kitchen, and didn't look at my phone once. There was no call, no message, no sudden apology. And it was okay. Better than okay. It was mine. By the time New Year's came, I realized I hadn't cried about them in months. They had built a home with me on the outside, and I had built one without them. And for the first time, I wasn't surviving. I was becoming. It started with a flat tire. Middle of March, sleet falling sideways, I was parked half crooked outside the community center where I'd been taking a once-a-week pottery class. Not because I wanted to become a potter, but because I wanted to touch something real. Clay didn't lie. I stared at the sagging tire and considered crying. Instead, I texted Jules. Jules wasn't family. She wasn't even a longtime friend. We'd met in that writing class I signed up for last summer. She had this way of tilting her head while you talked, like she was studying you for a story, but kindly, not intrusively. We weren't close, not exactly. But when I texted her, "Hey, not to be weird, but do you know how to change a tire?" she replied in 20 seconds. "No idea. But I've got AAA and a big coat. Sit tight." She showed up in 15 minutes, brought me a thermos of chai, made me laugh until my fingers stopped shaking. That's how it began, quietly and with chai. Over the next few months, Jules became more than a writing buddy. She became my person. We cooked meals together, tried terrible wines, made fun of each other's poetry, and fell asleep watching documentaries about whales. There were others too. Danica from the ceramics class, who brought over extra dumplings on stormy nights. Malik, my upstairs neighbor, who fixed my sink without asking and invited me to his niece's birthday party just because he thought I looked like someone who needed cake. Mrs. Alvarez, the 70-year-old widow who ran the corner thrift shop and saved books for me under the counter, always saying, "This one's got bite." Like you. They didn't replace what I lost. They weren't blood. But they showed up. Consistently. Kindly. And showing up, I learned, is the purest form of love. One night, in early fall, Jules and I sat on the rooftop of her building. We had wine in old mugs and a half-burned candle between us. She was talking about her sister, how complicated things were. The word family hung between us like a weight. I finally said it out loud. Mine lied to me to keep me out. On Christmas. She didn't gasp, didn't tilt her head. She just said, "That's the kind of thing that takes your breath away for years." I nodded. It did. And now, I looked up at the sky. A few stars had cut through the light pollution. Quiet, unapologetic. Now I'm breathing just fine. By winter, my apartment had become the unofficial hangout spot. Potluck Thursdays, movie nights with too many blankets, late talks on the floor when no one wanted to go home just yet. There was laughter, messiness, realness. I had a fridge with notes on it. Inside jokes. Lists of groceries we kept forgetting. A magnet that read, "Chosen family is still family." And I believed it. It came of all things in the form of a wedding invitation. A cream-colored envelope, thick and expensive feeling, with my full name written in looping calligraphy I recognized immediately. Elisa's handwriting. Inside Cole and Elisa's vow renewal. 10 years. Some estate in the Berkshires. June. Family-only ceremony. Intimate. We'd love for you to be there. Tucked in the bottom corner of the card. Almost hidden. Please call us Ren. It's time. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I left the card on the counter for a week. I didn't ignore it. I let it sit there like a stranger waiting to be acknowledged. I passed it every morning on the way to the kettle, every night when I turned off the lights. I didn't feel anger. I felt curiosity. What did they expect? That time had blurred what they did? that enough months had passed and I just fold back into the picture like a misplaced puzzle piece. No apology. No explanation. Just, it's time. Time for what? Time to pretend it never happened? I told Jules about it one night while we chopped vegetables for curry. She didn't say much. She didn't have to. Finally, I said, "Do you think I should go?" She looked at me, steady, thoughtful. "Do you want to?" I opened my mouth, then closed it. What I wanted was not to want them to have wanted me. What I wanted was not to feel 11 years old again, staring out the window on a holiday wondering if someone would come looking. "I don't think I do," I said. She nodded. "Then you already have your answer." But it didn't end there. 3 days later, Dad emailed me. First time since that last voicemail over a year ago. The subject line, just a note. No Ren. No sweetheart. Just, "I know we hurt you. I know we failed you. I wish I could go back and undo it. But I can't. I think about you every day. We made a terrible choice. I see that now. If there's any version of the future where you want to talk, I'll be here. Love. Dad." I read it 3 times, printed it out, folded it up, slid it into a drawer I rarely opened. Because here's the truth they didn't understand. Forgiveness isn't an invitation. Healing doesn't always include reunion. And love, real love, is proven by presence, not regret. That night, I stood on my balcony in the cold and watched the town slow into stillness. I thought about the version of myself who would have run to them, craving scraps. Then I thought about this version, quiet, whole, standing on her own 2 feet. I didn't go to the wedding. I didn't call back. Instead, I wrote, poured everything into pages that no one but me would read, for now. And I felt something I never expected to feel again. Peace. There's a certain sound the morning makes when you're not bracing for impact. It's quiet, sure, but not hollow. There's life in it. The soft clink of a mug on the counter. The hum of the radiator waking up. Your own breath, slow and unburdened. That's what my mornings sounded like now. I started saying yes to things I used to dodge. A spoken word open mic at a bookstore on Pine Street. A weekend hike with people I'd only met once before. Dinner with Malik's extended family, where I was the only non-relative and somehow still felt like I belonged. And most importantly, yes to me. To showing up for myself with the same consistency I used to reserve for people who took me for granted. The writing grew. Quietly at first. Then with fire. I took the pieces I'd scribbled on napkins, margins, and back pages of receipts, and stitched them together. By spring, I had a finished manuscript. A memoir. My story. Not polished, not clean, but true. I called it The House with No Doorbell. Because that's what it felt like to grow up somewhere where love knocked quietly, or not at all. Where you weren't sure if you were welcome until it was too late. I sent it to a small press out of Portland, expecting nothing. I got a reply 2 weeks later. This tore something open in me. We'd be honored to publish it. I sat on the floor when I read the email. Not crying. Not overwhelmed. Just still. Like something sacred had landed. Jules cried harder than I did when the galleys arrived. She brought me flowers and a chocolate cake with my name spelled wrong on top. Congrats, WRN. We didn't fix it. It felt perfect. At the launch reading, I stood at the podium and saw rows of faces, some familiar, some brand new. Friends, strangers, readers, not one blood relative. And still, I had never felt more surrounded. One woman came up to me afterward, maybe 50, clutching the book like it was a lifeline. "I didn't know anyone else had a Christmas like that," she whispered. I smiled. "I wish you hadn't. But I'm glad you're here." She nodded, eyes damp. I think I'm finally ready to stop waiting for them to come around. There it was. Purpose. Not just surviving. Not just healing. But guiding. Turning pain into a lantern for someone else's road. I changed nothing about myself to earn their approval. And I found peace anyway. I found myself. Not the daughter they remembered. Not the sister they filtered for Instagram. Not the shadow who used to beg for scraps. I was Ren. Whole. Loud when I wanted to be. Soft when I didn't. Unapologetically new. And entirely my own. The snow came late that year. It waited until December 23rd to arrive, floating down like someone had turned the volume down on the world. Everything slowed: cars, footsteps, breath. The kind of snowfall that makes you look up without realizing it. I was baking. Not because I had to. Not out of obligation. Just because I'd found an old handwritten recipe from Mrs. Alvarez tucked into a thrifted cookbook. Spiced molasses cookies. The card read, "For the kind of winter that needs remembering." My apartment looked different now. There were plants in the windows. Actual framed art on the walls. My desk was cluttered with second print run paperwork. A little vase of pine branches sat next to a candle that smelled like clove and orange peel. In the corner stood my second ever Christmas tree. Still lopsided. Still mine. That morning, Jules dropped off cinnamon buns and a gift wrapped in newspaper comics. Malik texted a photo of his dog in a Santa hat with the caption, "Come by or I'm mailing you this animal." I laughed until my stomach hurt. And then, something unexpected. I got a package. No return address. Inside, a small ornament. Hand-carved. A bird. Green wings, gold eyes. Identical to the one I'd bought the first year I was on my own. There was no note. Just a tiny card tucked into the box. "I see you now. Mom." I sat on the floor for a long time holding that card. Let the silence stretch around it. And then softly I whispered aloud, "I see me now too." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. This wasn't the kind of peace that depended on them anymore. This was the peace of standing on my own ground, in my own light, knowing that I had built a life out of ashes. Not perfect, not pain-free, but real. And mine. That night, I hosted a small dinner. 7 people squeezed around my tiny table. Jules made her terrible wine punch. Danica brought dumplings. We lit candles. Told stories. Someone cried. Someone laughed so hard they snorted. And in the center of the table sat a plate of molasses cookies. The kind meant for remembering. Before bed, I hung the ornament next to the original. 2 green-winged birds, side by side. Not to forgive. Not to forget. But to mark that I had come through. And that I had become. This was Christmas. Not the lie they told. Not the table they kept me from. Not even the apology that never quite came. This was mine. Chosen. Built. Claimed. I turned off the lights, leaving just the glow of the tree, and whispered, like a prayer or a promise, "Merry Christmas, Wren." And for the first time in years, I meant it.